There's this really pervasive myth in television, and honestly, I think in business in general.
Oh, the idea that quality just instantly finds an audience.
Exactly, yeah. We like to believe that if you build a better mousetrap, or in this case, if you write a smarter joke, the world is just going to beat a path to your door immediately.
Right. The cream rises to the top theory. It's a comforting thought, you know? A true meritocracy. If you're good, you win.
Yeah, but then you look at the actual data. You look at the history books and you find these anomalies that completely shatter that worldview.
Oh, absolutely.
And for this deep dive, we're looking at perhaps the most famous anomaly in sitcom history. We're looking at a show that, by all conventional metrics of 1983, should have been dead, buried, and totally forgotten before it ever got a second chance.
Dead, buried, and largely unwatched. We are, of course, talking about Cheers, Season 2. And it's interesting you frame it that way, because when we look at the source material for this deep dive, specifically the Wikipedia article covering the production history between September 1983 and May 1984, it's not just a story about a funny show finding its legs.
No, not at all.
It's really a case study in corporate patience.
Yeah.
Which is honestly something we rarely see anymore in media.
It's the miracle renewal. That's the headline everyone knows. But I really want to peel back the layers on why that miracle happened.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Because we aren't just talking about a show avoiding cancellation. We are talking about a major cultural pivot point. We're going back to a time when Ronald Reagan is in the White House. The internet is basically just a rumor in some computer lab somewhere, and NBC is in serious trouble.
Trouble's putting it lightly. NBC was the basement network at the time. They were really struggling.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to dissect this pivot. We're going to look at how Cheers went from the absolute bottom of the Nielsen ratings to the top tier in just a single season.
A massive jump.
And we're going to unpack the evolution of Sam and Diane. Because looking at the notes, Season 2 is really where that dynamic stops being, cute and starts getting psychologically complex and honestly a little dark.
And toxic, let's be honest. Looking at it through a modern lens, it's a very messy relationship. It's definitely not a fairy tale.
Incredibly messy. We'll get to the nose-pinching violence later. And of course, we have to talk about the literal fire.
The fire at Paramount, that is such a wild story.
A massive fire that destroyed sound stages but somehow completely missed the bar. We have a lot to cover. But let's start with the numbers, because I was looking at this starting position for Season 2, and it is bleak. It's not just bad, it's pack your bags bad.
It's abysmal. To set the stage for you, we are looking at September 29th, 1983. Season 1 has just wrapped up. Now, critically, the show is a total darling. It just swept the Emmys.
Literally 4 days before the Season 2 premiere.
Right. They win 5 Emmys, including Outstanding Comedy Series. So the industry is basically screaming, this is the best thing on TV. The critics are writing these glowing love letters.
Right.
But the American public, they are screaming, what is this? Or rather, they aren't screaming anything because they aren't watching at all. The show finished the previous season dead last among renewed shows. It was ranked 74th out of 77 shows on television.
74th? That is a ghost town.
Oh, completely. In today's climate, or really even in the 90s climate, that show is canceled before the wrap party. You do not get a Season 2 with those numbers. You barely get a back 9 of Season 1.
So this is where I want to push on the narrative just a little bit. The standard story is that NBC executives, Grant Tinker and Brendan Tartikoff, were these benevolent geniuses who saw the artistic value of Cheers and kept it alive out of the goodness of their hearts.
Right, the artistic champions.
But looking at the context of NBC's lineup in 1983, did they actually have a choice?
That's the cynical take, but it's probably the accurate one. You have to remember, NBC in the early 80s was the distant third network. CBS and ABC were just crushing them.
Yeah.
They didn't have a bench of hits waiting to take Cheers' place. If they canceled it, what were they going to air? Another failed melodrama, another variety show that nobody wanted.
Right. Sometimes retention is just a lack of better options. It's not that they loved Cheers so much. It's that the alternative was literal dead air. Or a test pattern.
Exactly. They needed content. But then something unprecedented happens between Season 1 and Season 2. The sources refer to it as the summer of reruns. And this is really the business lesson of the whole era.
Explain this to me. Because today, for us, with streaming, reruns basically just means I forgot to pause Netflix or I'm engaging in some comfort viewing. But in 1983, the summer rerun cycle was usually a complete dead zone, wasn't it? It was just garbage time.
Completely dead. Usually networks would just burn off failed pilots or air really generic content because they assumed everybody was outside and nobody was watching television.
Yeah.
But NBC made a strategic decision. They kept Cheers in the slot. They aired the pilot again. They aired the key episodes. They basically forced the audience to look at it.
And because the competition was also in rerun mode, the barrier to entry was lower for new viewers.
It's the scarcity of attention principle. People were flipping channels and, remember, physically walking up to the TV to turn the dial, and they stumbled onto the show.
Yeah.
And because Cheers is serialized, you really need to know the characters to get the inside jokes. That repetition allowed people to catch up without the pressure of a brand new season moving too fast for them.
The data really backs this up.
Right.
By mid-1983, during these supposedly dead summer months, the reruns started cracking the top 20. That is a massive leap from 74th.
Which is completely unheard of. It's like a band playing to an empty stadium, and then suddenly, without releasing a new album or anything, the stadium just fills up simply because they kept playing the same songs.
So they enter season 2 with this weird momentum. They have the shiny Emmys on the shelf, and they have this summer buzz. But now they actually have to perform. September 1983 rolls around. Does the summer of reruns actually translate to the fall season? Or was it just a fluke?
It wasn't just a translation, it was a total explosion. The turnaround was immediate. In the first 7 weeks of season 2, the show posts an average rating of 17.6.
Okay, pause there.
Yeah.
17.6. For you listening, if you haven't looked at a Nielsen chart since 1995, we need to contextualize that number. Because in the streaming era, we count views in the millions, but a rating is a percentage, right?
Correct. A 17.6 rating means 17.6% of all television-equipped households in America were tuned in. But the even crazier number is the share. They had a 27 share.
Meaning, of the people who actually had their TV turned on at that exact moment, not just owning a TV, but actively watching it, more than 1 out of every 4 was watching Cheers.
Exactly. Imagine that today. Imagine 1 out of every 4 people watching TV right now is watching the exact same scripted comedy. It just doesn't happen.
No way.
The Super Bowl gets those numbers. The Oscars used to. But a sitcom on a Thursday night, that is dominance. That is absolute monoculture.
And it's not like they had an easy path either. I was looking at the schedule grid for Thursday nights in '83. This wasn't a cakewalk where they were the only game in town.
No, Thursday was a complete war zone. NBC was trying to build this must-see TV block, though they didn't really call it that quite yet. But you had Give Me a Break and Mama's Family leading in.
Mama's Family. A classic in its own right, but a very different tone. Much broader sketch comedy vibes.
Very different, yeah. Then we got It Made, then Cheers, then Hill Street Blues. But look at the competition they were up against. CBS was airing Simon and Simon.
Which was a juggernaut at the time.
A massive hit. A detective show, action, mystery, very easy to watch. You didn't need to know what happened last week to enjoy Simon and Simon.
Right, very episodic.
And ABC was throwing everything at the wall shows like, It's Not Easy in Trauma Center.
Trauma Center sounds like a show I've definitely forgotten. Was that a medical drama?
It was a short-lived medical drama, yes, just one of the casualties of that time slot. But Simon and Simon was the real threat. It's fascinating because it represents the old guard of TV. Procedural, episodic, safe. Cheers was the new guard. Serial, character-driven, highly neurotic.
And Cheers won. Or at least it survived and thrived.
It finished the season in 35th place. From 74th up to 35th. That is the very definition of a breakout.
The notes mention that other shows weren't so lucky. Taxi, which is arguably just as brilliant as Cheers, maybe even more acclaimed critically, couldn't survive this exact lineup.
Taxi is the tragic counterexample here. It was also on NBC's Thursday lineup for a bit, but it just couldn't hold the audience. It got booted to Saturdays. Fame got pushed to syndication. It really highlights that Cheers had something highly specific that clicked at that exact cultural moment.
Why? What was the X factor? We have a critic here in the notes, Steve Sonsky, who described Cheers as comic exaggeration built on a grain of truth. Is that it? Is it just truth?
I think truth is definitely part of it. The bar setting is universal. Everyone knows a Norm. Everyone knows a Cliff. But if we are being honest, looking at the trajectory of season 2, the engine wasn't the setting. It wasn't the beer. It was the friction.
You're talking about Sam and Diane.
I'm talking about the central conflict. Season 1 established the tension. Season 2 is where they decided to just let that tension drive the car off the cliff.
It's interesting you say that because usually the golden rule in TV is don't get them together. The moonlighting curse,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
If the couple gets together, the sexual tension evaporates and the show dies. But in season 2, they actually are together.
They are together, but the writers, Glen and Les Charles, and the director, James Burrows, they did something brilliant. They realized that being together didn't have to mean being happy. They completely subverted the romance trope.
The notes describe their status in season 2 as having fulfilling casual sex, but little else in common, which is a very polite way of saying it was a total train wreck.
It was a disaster.
Let's dissect the anatomy of this train wreck, because we have 2 very specific archetypes here. Ted Danson as Sam Malone.
The jock. The recovering alcoholic. The guy who coasts on charm and physical prowess. He's street smart, but he's deeply insecure about his lack of formal education. He's a man who used to be a hero on the mound, and now he's serving drinks to people who just remind him of his glory days.
And Shelley Long as Diane Chambers.
The pseudo-intellectual. She's working as a waitress, but she acts like she's an anthropologist observing the lower classes.
Yes.
She is pretentious, verbose, honestly often quite cruel. She validates herself by making Sam feel small.
And in season 2, instead of the will they won't they dance, we get the they are, but it's a mess reality.
It's the definition of dysfunction. And the show doesn't shy away from it. In fact, they open the season with it. The premiere episode, Power Play.
Oh, this is the one with the door.
The door scene is iconic, but let's break down the psychology of it. Sam and Diane are looking for a place to be intimate. They go to her apartment, which is rare, by the way. We almost never leave the bar in this show.
True. It feels claustrophobic in the bar, so leaving should feel liberating.
But it doesn't. It feels invasive. Sam immediately starts mocking her. He makes fun of her stuffed animals. He's looking at her personal space and treating it like a joke.
Which, to be fair, if you bring a date home and your bed is completely covered in stuffed animals, questions will be asked. But Sam isn't asking questions. He's actively attacking.
He is. So Diane throws him out. Now, a normal couple, they cool off. They talk the next day. Maybe they apologize.
Sam Malone doesn't cool off.
No. He goes back to the bar, gets terrible advice from Carla, who actively wants to sabotage them, by the way, and he marches back. He literally kicks the door open.
He breaks in. Let's just call it what it is.
He breaks in and kisses her.
It's that old Hollywood trope, right? Aggression equals passion. If you push hard enough, she'll like it.
It is. And in 1983, the studio audience cheered. It was seen as romantic determination. But look at Diane's reaction. She says, "I've called the police."
A completely logical response to a break-in.
It is. And Sam immediately backs down. He realizes he crossed a major line. He apologizes. But then Diane reveals she was bluffing. She didn't call the cops. And they embrace.
It establishes the baseline for the whole season. Deceit, aggression, power plays, and then passion. It's a vicious cycle.
It's a completely dopaminergic cycle. High highs, low lows. And the writers knew that this instability was so much more interesting than domestic bliss. There's another episode that flips the script on this, dealing with the intellectual gap, Sumner's Return.
Oh, this is the War and Peace episode.
Yeah.
This is one of my absolute favorites because it's just so painful to watch.
It is painful, and this is crucial for understanding Sam. Diane's ex-fiancé, Sumner Sloan, the guy who dumped her in the pilot, comes back to the bar. He is everything Sam isn't. Cultured, literate, sophisticated.
Sam feels incredibly threatened.
Oh, deeply threatened. He feels small. He feels like just a bartender. So he decides he's going to read War and Peace to prove he's on their level.
That is not a light beach read. That is a massive commitment.
He spends 5 days on it, no sleep. He's struggling with the Russian names, the history. He's essentially torturing himself to be worthy of her world.
And the real tragedy is the payoff, or the total lack thereof.
Right. He finishes the book, he sits down at dinner, ready to debate Tolstoy. He's practically vibrating with knowledge, and Diane and Sumner just wave it off. They say, "Oh, that old thing. It's too well known to discuss. It's banal."
That is gut-wrenching.
Yeah.
It's elitism weaponized. It's basically saying your greatest, most agonizing effort is our boring Tuesday.
It is. It totally humiliates Sam. But notice what happens next. Sam confesses. He admits he read it because he was jealous. He shows genuine vulnerability, and that is what Diane responds to. She chooses him not because he's smart, but because he tried so hard for her.
It seems like season 2 is constantly asking the question, can these two people actually change each other, or are they just sharpening each other's worst edges?
That's the core question, and sometimes the answer is genuinely violent. We need to talk about Homicidal Ham.
The title alone tells you we are veering way out of standard sitcom territory.
This episode is bizarre. Diane has an ex-date named Andy. He's a convicted criminal, but he's also an aspiring actor.
As one is.
He comes to the bar, tries to rob it, but the climax of the episode actually happens during a local theater production of Othello.
Because nothing says sitcom hilarity like Othello.
Andy is playing Othello, Diane is Desdemona, and on stage, during the famous strangulation scene, he decides to actually strangle her.
Real-life blending with the play.
And Sam has to rush the stage to physically save her. It's slapstick, yes, but the stakes are literally life and death. It highlights how Cheers was willing to go into these much darker, almost thriller-like modes, but wrap it in a joke so you didn't quite realize how dark it was.
Speaking of dark,
Yeah.
we have to skip to the end of the season, the finale. I'll be seeing you. Because if the season starts with a break-in and a kiss, it ends with a portrait and a slap.
The ultimate disintegration. This episode is so painful to watch if you're invested in them. Diane commissions a portrait by an artist named Philip Semenko. Sam hates him. He's pretentious. He's arrogant.
He's basically a male Diane, but more successful.
Exactly. And the whole relationship just unravels over this. Diane calls it a contest of wills. She realizes they aren't partners at all. They're combatants.
And the critics at the time, they were pretty divided on this, right? I have a note here from the Gazette, Mike Boone. He thought the romance lasted too long.
Boone thought it spoiled the bar's atmosphere. He wanted the ensemble comedy back. But then you have Harry Stein from TV Guide who went even further. He called the relationship destructive. He argued it completely failed to model trust and moral values.
Which is funny because usually we don't look to sitcoms for moral instruction.
Yeah, we don't.
But Stein has a point. If you look at this relationship through a modern lens.
The AV Club did exactly that. They reviewed the finale years later. There's a scene where Sam and Diane are physically fighting, pinching noses, slapping faces, twisting arms.
Three Stooges-esque is the quote from the source.
Right. In 1984, that was comedy. Today, the AV Club called it troubling. They noted the subtext of violence. It really begs the question, were we laughing at abuse?
That's the real tension of revisiting these classics. You have the warm nostalgia, but then you have the realization that Sam Malone creates a hostile work environment every single day.
Every single day. And yet we still root for him.
We do, and we root for the people around him. Because while Sam and Diane are sucking all the oxygen out of the room, the rest of the cast is quietly having their best season ever.
The ensemble. This is the season where the supporting cast really stops being just support and starts being the structural pillars of the show.
Specifically, the mailman, Cliff Clavin.
John Ratzenberger. This is absolutely his breakout year.
I didn't actually realize he wasn't a main cast member in season 1.
He was just a guest star. He was literally just the guy at the bar. But in season 2, he gets promoted to the opening credits. He becomes the Cliff we know, the know-it-all, the blowhard.
And we find out he's Norm's best friend.
Which anchors him emotionally.
Yeah.
But the episode that really defines him this season is Cliff's Rocky moment.
Is this the karate episode?
It is. Cliff gets challenged to a fight by a patron named Victor. Cliff is terrified. He's a total coward. He leaves town to avoid it. But then he comes back and he decides to bluff. He claims he actually knows karate.
The deadly hands of the United States Postal Service.
Exactly. He sets up this elaborate demonstration where he's going to break a solid brick with his head to prove how dangerous he is.
And knowing Cliff, this goes very poorly.
Well, surprisingly, he actually breaks the brick. The crowd cheers. It's his huge moment of glory. And then he faints. He just passes out cold.
It's the perfect encapsulation of his character. He succeeds, but in the most embarrassing way possible.
And there's a really sweet moment where Diane helps him keep the secret. It adds a whole new layer of vulnerability. We realize Cliff isn't just annoying. He's incredibly lonely and desperate for any kind of respect.
Then we have Carla Tortelli. And this is a case of life imitating art in a very literal way.
Yes. Rhea Perlman was pregnant in real life. She gave birth in March 1983, so the show just wrote it in. Carla is pregnant for most of the season.
Which is pretty brave for a sitcom back then. Usually they hide the actress behind a giant laundry basket or a conveniently placed fern.
Right, the classic sitcom tricks. But they leaned into it. And it gave us the episode, Le Sister Don't Cha. Carla goes into labor. And we finally meet her sister, Annette.
Also played by Rhea Perlman.
A double role. And it's brilliant because Annette is the anti-Carla. She's polite, she's demure until she's not. She turns out to be incredibly flirtatious, especially with Cliff.
Poor Cliff. He never stood a chance.
It completely breaks his heart, but it really showed Perlman's range as an actress. And we also see a rare moment of maturity for Carla in the episode Battle of the Exes.
This involves Nick, her infamously sleazy ex-husband.
Nick and his new wife, Loretta. Carla and Nick share a vulnerable moment, a kiss. They think maybe the spark is still there, but then they pull away and realize, nope, it's gone. It's completely dead.
That's a heavy realization, to realize that the hate you've been holding on to doesn't even have passion behind it anymore. It's just exhausting.
It is. It's a very adult moment in a show that is usually full of rapid-fire jokes.
And speaking of adults, let's talk about the coach, Ernie Pantuso, played by Nicholas Colasanto.
The absolute heart of the bar.
He really is. He's the father figure for Sam and Diane. He's not book smart, but the show always emphasized his deep wit. He sees the emotional truth of a situation, even when he doesn't fully understand the vocabulary being used.
But season 2 gave him some real edge. Manager Coach is a fascinating episode. Coach takes over a Little League team.
And he turns into an absolute monster.
A total tyrant. He's screaming at kids, benchmarking them, acting like it's the 7th game of the World Series.
It's so jarring to see the sweet coach yelling.
It is. But it reminds us that he was a professional athlete. He was a highly competitive guy. Sam has to step in and remind him of his own past to snap him out of it. It added so many layers to a character who could have easily just been a one-note cartoon.
And sometimes he was just the obstacle. Like in Coachy Makes 3.
The ultimate third wheel. He's lonely, so he starts hanging out with Sam and Diane everywhere they go. He's ruining their romantic moments, just sitting there on the couch, completely oblivious. It's funny, but it's also deeply sad. It speaks to the profound loneliness of these characters.
You can't forget Norm.
Norm.
The man, the myth, the bar tab.
Season 2 is interesting for Norm because we really dive into his professional failures. He's a semi-unemployed accountant.
He is. And in No Help Wanted, he actually starts working at the bar.
Briefly. Very briefly.
He washes dishes at Melville's upstairs first, and then Sam hires him to do the bar's taxes. It seems like a great idea. Friends helping friends out of a jam.
Until it isn't.
Norm finds out Sam didn't actually trust him. Sam filed completely different tax forms than the ones Norm prepared.
That's a huge betrayal. It's basically telling your friend, I love you, but I think you're totally incompetent. Exactly. Norm nearly quits the bar entirely. It leads to this highly emotional reconciliation between them. And we also see his marriage arc progress. He separates from his unseen wife, Vera, then reconciles. In Norman's conquest, he even seriously considers cheating with a client.
Which is very dark for Norm. We usually think of him as harmless and jovial.
He considers it. But he realizes he loves Vera too much. He hides that affection constantly behind his old ball and chain jokes. But season 2 shows us that he really does care about her. He's not just a punchline. He's a guy trying to make a marriage work while feeling like a total failure in his career.
It's amazing how much depth they gave these characters in just 22 episodes. But shifting gears a bit, we teased this in the intro. We have to talk about the disaster, the fire.
This is one of those truth is stranger than fiction moments in Hollywood history.
August 25, 1983.
Cheers is filming at Paramount Studios. And suddenly, a massive fire breaks out on the lot.
Just how bad was it?
It was catastrophic. It destroyed 2 or 3 full sound stages. It wiped out 4 outdoor sets. We are talking about millions of dollars in damage. It looked like a war zone on the lot.
Did the Cheers bar burn down?
That is the absolute miracle. The fire raged all around it, but the Cheers production set, the bar itself, was totally unharmed. It completely survived.
That is unbelievable. It's like divine intervention for a sitcom.
It certainly felt that way to the cast and crew, but it had a very real impact on the season itself. Because of the extensive damage to the lot, the production was severely constrained. They couldn't film outside easily because the outdoor sets were literal ash.
So that contributed to the claustrophobia we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Diane's apartment in season 2 was the first location outside the bar that we see since the premiere. They were incredibly limited in where they could physically go, so the show became even more about the rapid-fire dialogue, the facial expressions, the tension inside that one single room. The fire practically forced them to double down on the writing.
And the writing held up beautifully. The production team, Glen and Les Charles, James Burrows, they stuck to their guns.
They did. They had a very clear philosophy. Les Charles admitted that Sam and Diane had strong chemistry but fundamentally incompatible backgrounds. They knew, even then, that the relationship was never meant to last forever. They weren't writing a fairy tale, they were writing a collision course.
And the industry rewarded them for it. We mentioned the Emmys before the season started, but they won during this era, too.
Yes, for the 1983-84 season, they received 12 nominations and won 4 more Emmys, including Outstanding Comedy Series again. Rhea Perlman won Outstanding Supporting Actress. They were validating the sheer quality of the writing and acting, even as the ratings were just starting to catch up.
I want to dive into some specific episodes that maybe aren't this huge season-defining milestones, but really define the specific flavor of Season 2. The deep cuts, if you will, because sometimes the best stuff is just sitting right in the middle of the season.
Oh, let's do it. I love the deep cuts.
Fortune and Men's Weight. This one involves a fortune-telling machine.
This is a quintessential sitcom plot, but done with that specific Cheers twist. Coach buys this old antique fortune-telling scale for the bar. Everyone gets a card.
And Norm gets a good one.
Norm's fortune says, "Your most troublesome problem will soon be solved." He assumes it means money or work.
But it's Vera.
It leads to an accidental date with her. He thinks he's meeting a stranger he met through the classifieds, and it turns out to be his own wife. It's incredibly sweet. It reinforces that they really are meant for each other.
But for Sam and Diane, the fortune is much darker.
It predicts deception.
Which leads to a massive fight, naturally, because they are always looking for reasons to fight.
Naturally. Diane has a platonic male friend she hasn't bothered to tell Sam about. Sam feels totally betrayed. They're on the verge of breaking up again, and they decide to let the machine decide their fate. They ask it for the future of their relationship. They put the penny in. The machine runs out of cards. The message just says, "Machine empty, order more fortunes today."
That is brilliant writing, just leaving it completely up to ambiguity.
It is. It's the writers basically saying, we don't know either. Another really great one is Where There's a Will.
This is the one with the dying man, right? Malcolm Kramer.
Yes. A dying man comes into the bar. He leaves $100,000 to the friends he made at the bar in his will. And suddenly, all that warm camaraderie evaporates. Everyone gets incredibly greedy.
Even Coach.
Everyone. It turns into this complete frenzy of avarice. They are planning how to spend the money before the guy is even buried.
And Sam decides to play moral arbiter, which is rich coming from him.
He burns the will.
He burns $100,000.
Well, he burns a piece of paper. He claims he burned the will to stop the greed. Diane is actually relieved. She's happy the madness is over. She praises him. But then Sam reveals he just burned a copy. He still has the real one hidden.
Classic Sam Malone. He wants the credit for being moral, but he definitely wants the money too.
Exactly. Diane berates him for tricking them. So in front of her eyes, he burns the paper again. But then Diane suspects he's tricked her again. She warns him about the guilt he's going to feel. And finally, just infuriated by her constant moralizing, Sam reluctantly burns the actual will.
It's a fascinating study of morals versus money. Diane shames him into doing the right thing.
And Sam absolutely hates her for it. It shows that her influence does make him a better person, but it also makes him totally miserable.
One more spotlight episode. Snow Job.
This is a prime example of their endless cat-and-mouse games.
No.
Sam wants to go on a ski trip. Not to ski, obviously, but to seduce women.
Obviously.
So he lies to Diane. He tells her he's going to a funeral for Uncle Nathan in Vermont.
Uncle Nathan. Not the most creative lie he's ever come up with.
Right. Diane isn't buying it for a second. She says she's going to check the obituaries. Sam spends the whole episode sweating, trying to cover his tracks. He eventually breaks down and admits the funeral is totally fake.
And Diane's reaction.
She reveals she knew he was lying the entire time. She never checked the obituaries. She just wanted to watch him squirm until he admitted it. She played him like a fiddle.
It shows that she is often one step ahead of him intellectually, but he is constantly trying to outmaneuver her anyway. It's a power struggle, pure and simple.
It is. And that intense power struggle is exactly what kept people tuning in week after week.
So we have looked at the ratings, the romance, the ensemble, the fire, and the episodes. When we look back at the overarching legacy of Season 2, how does it stand up today?
It stands incredibly tall. The critical reassessment over the years has been very kind. DVD Verdict gave the story a 90% rating. TV Guide named the episode How Do I Love Thee? Let Me Call You Back a classic.
That's the one where Sam tries to say, "I love you," and just fails miserably.
Yes. He says ditto instead. It's painful and hilarious. But getting back to the legacy, when the DVD came out in 2004, it included all these special features analyzing the characters. Things like Strictly Top Shelf and Cliff's Notes, the wisdom of Cliff Clavin. It solidified the idea that Season 2 is where Cheers truly became Cheers.
It's the season where they finally secured the audience. They jumped from the bottom of the barrel to the top 35, and eventually, of course, they would go even higher.
Exactly. It set the stage for the next decade of television dominance. It proved that a show about a bar with a smart, sophisticated, and very messy dynamic at its center could win over mainstream America.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's try to synthesize all of this. What is the big takeaway from Cheers Season 2?
I think the main takeaway is that season 2 is the year of definition. It defined the characters. Cliff became the Cliff we know. Norm became Norm. And it defined the will they, won't they trope for generations of sitcoms to follow. Shows like Friends, The Office, New Girl, they all owe a massive debt to the blueprint laid down by Sam and Diane in this specific season.
It's the season where they stopped being a critically acclaimed flop and started being a cultural classic.
Precisely. They prove that you can respect the audience's intelligence and still get the massive ratings.
Now, before we sign off, I want to leave you listening with a provocative thought. We talked about the modern criticism of Sam and Diane. The shouting, the deception, the physical altercations like the nose-pinching fight.
Right. It's very hard to ignore when you watch it today.
If Cheers Season 2 aired today, exactly as it was written in 1983, would we view Sam and Diane as a romantic comedy? Or would the internet label it a toxic tragedy? Was their undeniable chemistry enough to mask behavior that today we might find completely unacceptable? Or was it purely a product of its time, relying on the immense charm of Ted Danson and Shelley Long to make the unpalatable palatable?
That is the big question. Does the charm excuse the dysfunction? Or is the dysfunction the only thing that actually makes it interesting?
Something for you to mull over. If you haven't seen it in a while, go back and watch the Season 2 finale. I'll be seeing you with this deep dive in mind. See how it hits you now.
It's definitely worth a rewatch. Just maybe don't model your own relationships after it.
Very sound advice. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into Cheers Season 2. We'll catch you on the next one.